Hi, everyone. Welcome to You'll Probably Agree. And we haven't had her on in a while, but returning to the show is Andrea Thompson from, I think it's a Film Girl Film Festival now that's accepting submissions.
Yes.
I put the link in the description if you want to send it below. But anyways, thank you for coming on. I chose a movie that's a little bit of the opposite of what we did last week. Last week, we did an episode on a horrible protagonist to see if he was actually kind of human being, and well, the answer was complicated, and that was There Will Be Blood. Here's the opposite, where we have a film that, and I'm going to throw up the spoiler banners now, is the total opposite of that movie. The Elephant Man is about the power of human kindness and compassion, and how you could give someone who seems to have a meaningless life some actual meaning to it and purpose, and actually be able to feel loved. And it, it's one of my favorite films of all time. So I could go on forever about it. But Andrea, I know you saw this for the first time yesterday. What were your thoughts on the film?
Basically, yeah. Well, I was sorry I'd left it a film gap, and I thought it was about empathy as only David Lynch could bring it. Unabashedly sentimental, very, very compassionate. As you said, very empathetic. This movie's like, they clearly wanted it to be like that empathy machine that I believe Ebert talked about.
Yeah.
And but very clear eyed also about what people were capable of when, as you've noted, that this main character, due to the times and structure of the city he lived in, he would have been completely dependent on human kindness to just
Hmm.
get through the day, minute by minute, because of who he was. So I thought the movie did extremely well. I'm also a fan of David Lynch. It's just,
Hmm.
and you've already warned about spoilers. It's just later in the film with that kidnapping
It's okay.
sequence
It's
I
This movie
felt
came out in
was
1980. It's
a bit
okay.
much.
Which part? Oh, when
Like,
the kid. Oh,
yeah,
when
like they were
Bites comes
obviously,
in.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, pardon?
Oh, you mean the part where
Well, they were
Bites
also
comes in and they
obviously trying
kidnap
to
him?
show like all the, yeah, and he's kidnapped. Like they were like obviously trying to show the danger he was still in despite his situation, and
Yeah.
that he wasn't the only one who was being exploited in this way. They wanted to show the kind of the wider community, like of what people like openly referred to as freaks at the time.
Mhm.
But I thought there could have been a better way to do it. That they really hammered that home in the last half of the movie a bit too much.
Oh, I don't quite agree
So
with that.
yeah,
I think
that's the
this
only
movie
drawback. But
doesn't I feel like this movie doesn't feel overly sentimental. It doesn't kind of feel like some of the stuff that Spielberg
mhm,
within the downslope of his career would produce. This movie feels genuinely heartfelt. Because here you have the story about a
it is very
guy.
genuinely heartfelt.
Yeah. Yeah, and it comes from a place, as you were
Hmm.
saying, from David Lynch, where he's this guy from this small town, and if you've seen Twin Peaks or Jesus, a lot of his other work,
Anything really that
yeah,
he's made.
there's these
Yeah.
kind of small town people who are like, oh, hey, we're good folks, stuff like that. It's kind of like Fargo without psychos, although there are a lot of psychos in Twin Peaks, as we know. But he gives you that nice kind
Mhm.
of
Yeah.
home feeling to it. There's even some stuff he does, like because he grew up around factories, so you have like a lot of these factory shots going. Like the
Hmm.
clock at one point wakes up John Merrick,
The
played by.
dehumanizing effect of this work. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
exactly.
the effect they can have on the human body.
Yeah, and they put in
Hmm.
all of these elements, and it plays for something that I haven't seen in a lot of other movies. Like, to give an example of a movie that's like bad that you could say in a crass way is like look at Radio. There you have like Cuba Gooding Jr. and he's got his mental
Yeah, I haven't
deficiencies.
bothered to see that one.
Yeah, it's like look
Yeah.
at Radio, and then you look
It
at, and
just
I've owned
looks.
this. Yeah. Yeah, it was. I can tell
Hmm.
you, it's as bad
And
as the trailers were.
yeah. Oh, yeah, that's the impression I get. And like I thought it was really remarkable because the movie didn't really suffer from making Merrick this kind of ideal victim, which I was really surprised by.
Hmm.
Because he was really this person that you would wanna give this kind of kindness and compassion to. He was
Hmm.
he'd been through so much, and he let it make him an empathetic person in spite of how most people treated him throughout his life. He was artistic. He made these models,
Hmm.
very talented, very intelligent.
Yeah, that's the thing that
So,
about the movie where I kind of had this weird sort of like hypothesis when I was watching it this time around because I've seen it my whole life, and it was you had that moment where Frederick Trees, played by Anthony Hopkins, played beautifully by him because I think if a dull actor played him, he could have been a very dull role because he's just there to be nice to the Elephant Man. But there's a lot more to him than that. Anyways, Hopkins is magnificent in it. Uh,
oh yeah.
he's looking at the
Yes, like a lot
carriage.
of actors are overwhelmed by those, yeah, prosthetics and makeup, but he
Yeah.
was not. He made that a part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Hopkins was like the perfect opposite of John Hurt, the late
Hmm.
John Hurt. There was a great deal of intelligence between them, and I had this weird hypothesis when I'm watching the movie: is what if the Elephant Man, what if John Merrick was in fact slow or stupid? Because the way they depict him in the movie, it's like he's this guy who his mother rejected him when he was a kid, and then he ended up kind of being on his own and living in these uh circuses so he could get by. And the reality of the story is that he and the circus guy, I think, actually got along, him and Bites, I should say. But again, that wouldn't make for a very good story, and it would be very antithetical to the plot. But it's like, what if John Merrick was slow? Would he have given him the same treatment? Would they have become friends? Or was it because he realized he was intelligent, maybe perhaps brilliant? If you're growing up, only in circuses, how do you know art? How do you know uh or he doesn't know art that much, but he's very curious, and he knows the Bible very well, and he knows all these little things. It's like, how could someone in that
Hmm.
situation be that smart? Well,
If you are naturally intelligent and you have a natural curiosity, I think at first he hoped he was dumb because then he wouldn't the full gravity of his situation wouldn't hit him. And I think it was kind of a realistic portrait of a smart person kind of getting out of an abusive situation personally, because a lot of us who go through our lives at least treated like human beings don't realize like how much we are shaped by other people even in daily interactions. So I thought that was a really intelligent thing the movie did. And showing how he gradually came out and felt comfortable kind of revealing
mhm,
himself to people personally. Yeah, I think there was a reason that they made it only a loose biopic and gave him a slightly different name, because yeah, I wish they had let the nicer details of his life, as I could say, like the fact that he and the circus guy got along, shine through.
yeah,
You know,
that that would really be bad if
because
they
this
put
wasn't
that
the
in.
first time I'd heard of him.
Oh,
I'd
oh.
read about him and a couple of other people who were as a kid, who were kind of on the circuit, like Chang and Eng, conjoined twins. I believe
Hmm.
they were kind of big celebrities too, and I believe they were the reason that conjoined twins for so long were called Siamese twins, because they were actually from Siam and they were discovered and brought to kind of exhibit themselves.
Hmm.
So I wish the movie had gone into kind of more the complexity of it, because this circuit that a
Mm.
lot of people, like disabled people, little people, were on, that was, I believe, that lasted well into the 21st century.
Hmm.
And it was often how the only way people could make a living in their situation.
Yeah. Well,
And some
I
of them got really
understand.
rich off of it.
Oh yeah, and I understand that. I think if they put that in the movie, it
Not
wouldn't
saying that was
quite.
justified, you know,
Yeah, no,
it
absolutely.
wouldn't, yeah, for what
Right.
they were
No,
trying to do.
Yeah, I hear you. I think if they try to put all that in the movie, it may have kind of jumbled up the overall theme of how human kindness gave John Merrick, whose real name, by the way, is Joseph Merrick, and they, for some
Hmm.
reason, called him John in the movie. Like you'd think they could at least get his name right. Uh, they gave him like a
Well, I think they
reason.
wanted to not make it strictly a biopic. I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, it's not a birth to death movie. This is kind of the movie about a man within the later years of his life. And basically, he's just kind of ready to die because he has this guy named Bites, who's this circus exhibitor who continually physically abuses him and puts him on display for profit. And of course, one day he runs into this doctor played by Anthony Hopkins. His name is Frederick Treves. And at first, he's kind of doing the same thing that Bites is doing because he shows him as an exhibit to all the people within the medical community or the top brass within that part of London of the community that was there at the time. And he has him butt naked there. He's examining his body for about an hour. And yeah, it's for medical purposes, certainly. And then there's that one line Anthony Hopkins says, and I hope I can quote it correctly, where he says, I've never seen a more perverted or degenerative version of a human being in this man before, or something like that. And it's just like, Jesus, like, what a horrible thing to say. But in the end, they become friends because he is
Terrible, but
intelligent.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But in the end,
But
he
I
kind of
think
learns
I
from
think that
him.
was a very good choice. I think kind
Yeah,
of because no one told them it was wrong. It showed them how
yeah.
like the poor were treated, how the medical
Hmm.
establishment treated people who had mental illness or
Hmm.
physical disabilities. So honestly, I think it was a very realistic way he would treat him. A man like that would treat him at the beginning, no matter how well meaning he is. I mean, you look back on some of these great so-called, great benefactors and how they talk and write about these people. Thank goodness by today's standards, at least I hope it would be unacceptable, you know.
Yeah, and the thing is, he is exhibiting him, but they do end up becoming
Hmm.
friends, and I think he learns something
Yeah, they
from
do.
Treves. It's not just like,
Hmm.
oh, we're buddies now because we know art and we can read together. Like, no, it was more like, oh,
Hmm.
you're actually a good human being and you're making me realize, am I doing the same thing to you? Granted, there was the nurse who came in who said,
Yes, I
I think you're
was.
doing the same thing all over again, which is
Yeah,
some extent he was, but at the same time he was also giving John a social life that he's never had before. So he has that scene where he's with the two people
definitely.
and he's having tea with them, and he's like, people don't understand what looks different. And you could tell by their reaction, they're like,
And because of
okay,
that, he is
yeah.
able to stay. you
Mm-hmm.
know I'm glad they had him question that, what he did, what he was doing. But yeah, they showed the complexity of that, of him allowing that. But yeah, the royalty ended up like, making sure he could stay at that hospital and actually
Oh
be
yeah.
treated like more like a person than he ever had been.
Someone in the comments section, can I hear what this is about? This is about the Elephant Man, the 1980 movie. It's in the thumbnail. But thank you for joining in. We appreciate it. But no, yeah, no, it's about, yeah, the Elephant Man. It's about a story about a guy who had a horrible life. He was physically abused because he looked different and sounded different, and it's kind of relative today when you
Extremely
think about.
different, yeah.
Yeah, it's relative today because although
Because yeah,
we
he didn't
treat,
just look different, he looked extremely different in a way that,
yeah, well, yeah, where he
yeah,
ended
that
up
was
becoming a
instantly
spectacle.
visible. Yeah.
Yeah, he became sort of a
Yeah.
spectacle of
in
himself.
in a
But
different, that there was just no way he could have had any kind of, well, for lack of a better word, normal life, nor
yeah,
phrase,
yeah,
or healthy life in
but
that
he did end
society.
up.
And I
Yeah,
don't think he was physically capable of working. So
yeah. Well, the but the
of
point
working
I
for a living, which also, society does and still demands someone do. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
No, I'm sorry. I interrupted you. That was my fault. Um,
Now, I
I
like to think we're interrupting each other equally well.
I
That's how
think
I
it's
like
the
to look
internet.
at it.
I think it's the internet connection.
It
Yeah.
might be that too.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah, I noticed we're
I saw it.
blinking out a little bit.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's the beauty of it.
So
I
what's
mean, all
happening in
of
the
it.
browser?
I have no idea what it is, but it's no big deal. We're
Yeah.
talking about the Elephant Man. We're having a good time. We're,
Hmm.
we could not display human compassion and be like, "Oh, it's your connection. It's your connection. Screw you." But that would be the opposite of the movie. But
Oh no.
though the greatest thing about this film is that, yeah, you have these characters questioning their own action, but you also have this story about a guy. It's like where it says you could be anyone. You could be someone who, can't walk, can't speak, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, if you have something that brings you joy and closure, then that means your life is still worth living, no matter how limited it may be. Even if they can't work, even if they can't do things that
Hmm.
most people in a regular society can do, they have little moments that make life worth living. And if I may, I have a small clip from the movie I wanted to play,
Yeah.
and then I'll explain why that moment means so
Hmm.
much.
Tonight's performance was very special to me because it was very special to someone else. A man who knows the theater and who loves the theater. And yet this is the very first time he's ever been here. The whole company wishes to dedicate with all their hearts tonight's performance to Mr. John Merrick, my very dear friend.
Now, I always love that
Hmm.
scene because here you have this person who's in a very high society. She's a well known actress, and she goes and not only, like, recites Shakespeare with John, but she also invites him to the theater and has that whole place erupting in applause for him. And the thing is, and we're going to spoil the ending, but that's okay because you can click out of the podcast now or you can watch it here. But in the end, I think John felt he was fulfilled, but he could be abducted again. It could happen again, because his life is so filled with misery. But he was given joy, and he
And I felt
does.
like the movie was, yeah, the
Yeah.
movie was also trying to argue this person has value
Mm-hmm.
because according to a lot of segments of society, he was not contributing to it at all.
Yeah.
He wasn't having a family, he wasn't working, he wasn't, you know, he was not presenting like, how do I say it, an aesthetically pleasing countenance, I should say. And
Right.
to some people, they would say that why is that person? Some people would be so cruel as to say, why is that person even alive then? So,
Yeah.
and I would argue that this movie does a service by just empathizing. Like, yeah, he got joy and everything out of this, like you point out.
Yeah. And I think that at the end, I think he also was so traumatized, so hurt that he I was it suicide in
Hmm.
the end? Did he like consciously say, "You know what? I want to end on a high note, so I'm going to take the pillows away and I'm going to
Hmm.
lay on the bed and let my neck snap and I'm going to be reunited with my mother as she'll finally accept me either for who I am or he becomes the image of who he wants to be." But Lynch doesn't tell us what that ending means with the mother. What do you think that ending
No,
meant?
I think he wanted to let him like go out in dignity. It kind of reminded me of the
Mhm.
scene of, in a way, it reminded me of kind of another spoiler for another movie of the last scene in Atonement, where the author says, "I like to think giving them this different, happier ending isn't weakness or evasion, but a final act of kindness."
Yeah.
you know. And I
Yeah.
like to think that's what Lynch was trying to do. I think also in real life his mother died, so she
David
didn't abandon.
Lynch's.
I don't think she abandoned him. I think
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think
No, you
in
mean Joseph.
reality his mother died. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, there's that heartbreaking line, which I don't know how I didn't notice it before, but he said, when he was with Anthony Hopkins' family, with the wife and himself, he says, "I've never had a,
Hmm.
I wonder what my mother would think of me now that I'm with people, you know, having an actual relationship, because I know I'm such a disappointment to her." And I just want her to accept me, and then that makes Anthony Hopkins' wife, too. I can't remember the actress's name, but she bursts into tears. And that scene's absolutely, heartbreaking, because it's like, Mrs. Trees, played by Hannah Gordon.
Hmm.
She Her reaction is so sad, because she's crying for the audience, and yes, this is a movie that's trying to elicit cries, but at the same time, it's like you start to understand that we have no concept of how hard someone else's life can be, and all we can do is help them out. And I think that's kind of the definition of empathy. It's like
Hmm.
when Anthony Hopkins talks to when Frederick Treves talks to Mr. Cargon, played by the great John Gielgud. Uh, they're he could tell that they're trying to rehearse a scene together, so then the guy who runs the hospital will accept him. But once he starts to recite a part of the Bible
Hmm.
that's not part of it, and they rush back in, and then Cargon says to Treves, "Come to my office. I want to talk to you about something." And he says, "Could you imagine what kind of life he has?" Treves just goes, "Yeah, I think I can," like as a doctor, like in a very strict medical way. And he goes, "No,
Hmm.
you." Cargon says this to him. He says, "No, you couldn't. Nobody can imagine what that life is." And it was up to the duty of that hospital, although they didn't take in untreatable patients, I should say, to take him in, because they knew, like you said, he is of value, and not just financially, I mean, but in terms of saving another human life. And that's what they wanted to do. It wasn't about making him
Hmm.
medically better. It was about making him psychologically better, because he went through so much. And it's a beautiful
Hmm.
kind of essay about doctors who break the system to really give care to people who need mental health treatment, real mental health treatment, and not like the kind of stuff that the
And
system produces to people.
as we've kind of all found out from like recent years, pandemic, elections,
Hmm.
sometimes the only choice you have left is how to respond to a situation. And that's when you find out who you really are. So, and sometimes that's horrible, and sometimes that's beautiful. So I always like it when movies like this, make a case for for kindness, and when so much around us is like all but encouraging us to be unfair, to close ourselves off.
Mm. Yeah, because now we kind of live in an unempathetic society where we have a president who promotes bullying, which is one of the worst things you could
Yes.
possibly have.
Oh,
Whether he's.
even worse, taking food right out of the mouths of the poor when the
Hmm.
job market is like the worst I've ever seen.
Yeah,
Like,
I
and
mean,
giving the people who already have everything like
yeah,
more and more. Like, it's, I know cruelty is the point, but that is so horrifically
yeah.
cruel to me.
And that's why it's important to
It,
see movies like this, because it reminds us, oh, wait, we can
mhm,
use our compassion to build a better world. And instead of using our fists, we could use our words, we could
mhm.
use our love, we could use our connection. So guys like Merrick have a reason to live. And it's just those little things that we do that make a huge difference in
Definitely.
society. And it's just so beautiful.
Yeah,
But yeah.
and we don't like to admit that movies and things like this can so easily teach us the opposite of empathy. Like we we all know that it can so easily teach hate to the image use of imagery, and it really is, you know. We're seeing all the AI videos that are coming up, that are like showing us the worst, like all the stereotypical views of people on like Snap, on benefits, you know, just as
Mm-hmm.
ever so many people are suffering. So
Yeah,
we
I
have
mean the
to,
internet.
I think things like this are so important, working towards something better.
Yeah, and I think if society doesn't improve, people like John Merrick would have still lived the horrible life that he does. But now at least we have everything. There's that one actor. I can't remember his name. His name's like Adam something, and he was in Under the Skin, and then he was in A Better Man or something like that, where like this guy who sort of had the same thing John Merrick had, got surgery, got fixed, and
Hmm.
then but anyways, there's an actor who kind of looks like him, and he has a full life because he found a life as an actor, which is amazing. But it just proves,
That is
man, like
incredible.
don't give up, man. Like that's kind of the point of the movie is, doesn't matter how old you are, doesn't matter how poor you are, you can find a reason to be happy. And one weird thing, I guess, one criticism is that it kind of shows people on the lower classes dirtbags, because you have the security guy who lets
Hmm.
everyone in where they kidnap John, and then you have Bites who exploits him for money. But then again, it also shows the nurse who's lower class, and she's kind to him. She's strict, but she's kind. But yeah, it's a little weird how it kind of shows classism in that way, but at the same time, it does show how people are good in general, I think. Because when you see John around poor people,
Hmm.
for instance, that's where he's being pushed around and displayed and mocked. But then when he goes to the theater, I'm going to guess none of those guys in that bar can afford going to the theater, and everyone there just gives them a lush applause. So I found a criticism to say about one of my favorite movies of all time. But yeah, I don't know if that's something I'm proud
Well,
of. It's actually
yeah,
kind of
I
sad.
felt like it was just, yeah, I felt like it was just the most obvious, among the poor, because
Yeah,
I felt like it was kind of a reflection of what the world and society around them had kind of, in a sense, reduced them to.
yeah, yeah. It's kind of
Because
like a
like
monetary value
he
sort
was
of
on he
viewpoint.
was on display. Yeah, he was on like display, full display for the surgeons, but they just wouldn't do that because it wasn't proper. So I can
Hmm.
see what you're saying, and I feel like that is a valid criticism of the film, but
Yeah,
also that polite society is going to be polite about mocking you and disliking you, which I didn't
yeah.
quite tap into.
Yeah. I think in general the movie's
Hmm.
trying to say that the world has more good people than it has bad people. I mean, John Merrick could have been when he was kidnapped and thrown back into the circus and taken to France, you know,
Hmm.
all his friends, everyone in the circus, they decided to bail and to free him.
Hmm.
And then he was able to come back to a home. And this movie does show that although he was displayed and mocked, when he had that final moment in the theater, I think he felt like, you know what, this is the way I want to go because now I know that I am loved and I belong. And maybe I don't want to
Hmm.
ever experience the
People
pain
care.
that I've been through again. So then he commits suicide, which I mean, here's the thing. I kind of mixed that. I feel like he shouldn't have committed suicide. It would have been more of a happy Hollywood ending if he just lived. But at the same time, I totally understand why he did it. And it kind of makes it open for discussion. So it makes it way more
Hmm.
incredible and meaningful and dreamlike that David Lynch is so great at. It's like this is one of his most
Hmm.
conventional films, but it's still very dreamy and weird and but it doesn't his movies don't feel like they're being weird for the sake of being weird, outside of maybe Inland Empire a little bit. But otherwise, this is a genuine artist who can't replicate anything, and he's one of the few auteurs who doesn't try to copy what other people do. He just weird shit pops in his mind, and then he puts it on the screen. But there's an intention and a purpose to it, and this movie kind of directly shows you what the intention is. But you
Definitely.
still get his style there, and this was the movie that made me curious about David Lynch when I saw it, I'm like, who's this David Lynch guy? And I thought he was dead or something. Well, now he is. But he,
Yeah, may he
but
rest in peace.
yeah. I mean that he's got the same thing.
I thought the movie though, didn't it mention that he was dying at the
Yes,
end?
and I think that's another
So he
reason he
knew,
took
and
his
maybe he
life.
just wanted to go out on his own terms, in control, the best day he'd had.
Yeah. No, and I'm glad you
Mhm.
mentioned that because that was a little detail I forgot to mention is that yeah, I saw recently and like the nurses are talking or something like that and they say like, "Oh, he's dying." Yes. And that's when that's when I think he kind of realized cuz he probably died from being shoved out in the cold and the rain in the middle of France with his shirt off. It probably kicked in his bronchitis and he could barely breathe, so we just decided I'll go out
Yeah,
peacefully.
they make it ambiguous, and he wasn't in a good
Yeah.
place mentally after that. Obviously, sure that didn't help.
Yeah. I know. I know.
Mhm.
Like he was happy for moments, but it's like that kind of trauma would that I couldn't even imagine what that kind of life is like. It is exactly like Mr. Coggon says. It is, unimaginably horrific in a way. But yeah,
Mhm.
if you were to rate this movie out of 4 Guinnesses, how many would you give it?
3 or 3.5 out of 4.
Okay, 3.5 out of 4. That is. So,
For the
oh wait, did I write the three?
cues
Bring
I've mentioned previously.
3.5. There we go. I fixed it. Yeah, 3.5. So yeah, very good. I think those are some valid complaints, but yeah, the classism thing I noticed. But I still have to
Hmm.
say, out of all movies that are sentimental, this is one of the most genuinely beautiful sentimental films I've ever seen. It gets a 4 star for me. It is one of my favorite movies of all time. I think it's David Lynch's best film. It's his most conventional film next to A Straight Story, but it was the movie that made me curious about Lynch and then go down the road of Lynch, and it's a road that leads to all sorts of places. I was trying to make a pun about like that movie he made about roads, but someone was asking with Anthony Hopkins, great movie. Yes, that is a. Thank you for mentioning that. Yes, this is the Elephant Man with John Hurt, Anthony Hopkins, and Bancroft. Ooh, why am I blinking on Mr. Cargon's name? Mr. John Gielgud. And is there any other names I've noticed? No, but yeah, excellent cast, excellent movie. If you like what you saw, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff everyone does to YPA Reviews. And you can find all of our information at ypareviews.com and go to the information on Andrea's channel below, and it'll show, or not channel, but her website, show you how to send submissions to the Film Girl Film Festival. Until then, I'll let you know where we're going. We'll see you there, and be kind to each other. And rewind.
Yes.
I don't know about that pun, but goodbye. Awkward.